Let's talk to God. One more thing, like, subscribe, and share. Come on, let's talk to God. Woo!
All right. Good evening, everybody. Hey, it's Cutler here in the Let's Talk to Cutler broadcast, the Let's Talk to Cutler virtual book club, the Let's Talk to Cutler YouTube channel. And I'm so delighted to be able to spend these 1,800 seconds with you. You know, I go live these Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I try to spend about 1,800 seconds making sure that I offer something that's inspirational, something that's a little motivational, and something that sometimes challenges us to make sure that we're doing what we can to show up our best selves, even in the worst of situations. I believe in trying to show up your best self even in the worst of situations, because life happens, and from time to time you end up getting bad news, you end up finding yourself in bad situations, you end up finding yourself in challenging circumstances. And so there has to be something that centers us, something that settles us, something that helps us to hang on and grab a nugget, so that when life happens, that you are able to pull of your character and pull of your integrity and stay where you are, be who you are, and be true to who you are. So that's what we talk about for 1,800 seconds every Tuesday and Thursday. I want to thank those of you who have been with me for a while. Only God knows you've been very supportive and encouraging and motivating. And I thank you so much for that. I want to remind you, though, that when life happens, you want to look back at your day and say, hey, did I show up better today than I did yesterday? And then as we talk, as we converse, as we communicate, I hope I'm dropping some nuggets whereby you can say, hey, you know what? I want to make sure that I show up a better person tomorrow than I did today. It doesn't mean that anything was wrong with yesterday or today, but it means that I'm intentional about showing up my best self whenever I can. I'm intentional about making sure that life and its situations are not the things that I succumb to. I want to make sure that whenever life is happening, that my character is true, my integrity is true, that my fortitude is true, that my tenacity is still intact. I want to make sure that when life is happening, all of those things that ground me, all of those things that settle me are where they should be. And so if you are part of that journey, I want to thank you. So come on and make sure that you go and tell somebody that's come on, let's talk to Color. I mean, the man is only here for 1,800 seconds, but do me a favor. If you have not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. And after you subscribe, do me a favor. Just one more favor is all I ask. Click on the notification bell. Now, I don't know if it's down there. I don't know if it's up there on I don't know what your device looks like. It may be over there, but click on it, because it lets you know whenever I've gone live. It lets you know whenever I've uploaded new content. Like for now, I have not uploaded new content, but I am here live. This is me live and in living color. This is dating me. This is not Memorex. This is me, y'all. I'm here. It is the 14th of December, and I'm here with you all. So I want to thank you. I'll shout out the people, the LTTC VIPs, in just a moment. Those are the people that I will see over in the chat room, the people who sometimes beat me to the chat, the first 3 people who are there. I want to tell you all this. I am getting ready for the holidays. I'm so looking forward to family and friends. I'm looking forward to just being able to have some quiet time, some downtime with family and friends and people who anchor me. I think a couple of years ago, I posted a picture and I said, these are my anchors. I'm thankful for people who anchor me. And you should be thankful for people who anchor you as well. I wanted to talk today about making sure that we have the right connections. And then I want to talk about setting boundaries, because I want us to realize that as we are going into the new year, and as we are going into the new year, I want to make sure that we are taking the right people with us into the new year. Make sure that wherever you go, whatever you do, however you be, wherever you show up, make sure that you have the right people connected to you. It is okay to do a people evaluation from time to time. It is okay to do a people inventory from time to time, because you want to make sure that you have the right people in your life, and you are in charge of that. So I just want to encourage you to make sure that you are connecting with the right people. Again, I wanted to talk about setting boundaries, but I realized, you know what, Cutler, before you can talk about setting boundaries, we need to make sure that we have the right people in our lives. And you will know that you have the right people in your life when you can set boundaries with them. I'm just going to have to blend these conversations together this evening and make sure that they work for us. Blending or setting boundaries is so very important. It is essential. It is necessary. And setting boundaries does not look the same for everybody. So this is one of those conversations where I need you to chew up the meat and spit out the bones. What works for you works for you. What doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. But make sure as you're going into the new year, how do you know that you have the right people? Because you can set boundaries with them, and you should not feel guilty about setting boundaries. You should not feel guilty about setting boundaries, because setting boundaries really is a manifestation of self-love. It's a manifestation of self-care. It's a manifestation of looking out for yourself. And it may take time to do that. Sometimes we don't know the boundaries that we need to set. Sometimes we need to kind of decipher what boundaries we need to set. But I want to encourage you to do that. As you're getting ready to go into 2024, God willing, and we get there, make sure that you are setting boundaries with people who are in your life. Make sure that you set, and not just set, but maintain boundaries. And not only set and maintain boundaries, but slow down, but set, maintain, and respect other people's boundaries. But before we can set those boundaries, what are we doing to make sure that we're taking the right people on our journey with us? Sometimes, you all, we need to step back and say, am I taking the right people on the journey with me? I'll shout out the LTTC VIPs in just a moment, but I want you all to go and tell somebody, come on, let's talk the color, because he's really saying something tonight. Yes, it's one thing to set boundaries, but before I can set boundaries, I need to make sure that I've connected with the right people. Some connections are easy, some connections take time. And we need to ask ourselves, are there some, not only some connections that I need to make, but is there some disconnecting that I need to do? It doesn't mean throwing people away, throwing people in the garbage, but it means maybe I need to reduce the amount of time that I spend with people. Maybe I need to reduce the amount of access that I give people to my life. Maybe I need to reduce the level of advice and counsel that I allow people to give me. So disconnecting does not mean completely getting people out of your life, but it could be a matter of how often are they in your space? How much counsel or wisdom do you allow them to give you? How much deference do you give to what they have to say? That could be a kind of disconnection. And so I want us to think about that. It doesn't matter whether you are an introvert or an extrovert. It does not matter. We need to firm up our connections with people. We need to make sure that we are connecting in a right way, in a real way. And what do you mean by in a real and right way, Cutler? In a way that's true to us, in a way that works for us. Make sure that you're connecting with people in a way that work for you, not a way that puts weights and restrictions and those sorts of things on you. No. Make sure that when you connect with people, you are able to be your authentic and organic self. You can never go wrong being yourself, because pretending to be somebody else, to pretend to be somebody that you're not, what does that really end up doing? Pretending to be someone that you're not ends up building a relationship on a foundation of lies, and it creates a house that will fall. I know sometimes some people are desperately trying to fit in. They consider themselves somewhat of a chameleon and somewhat been flexible and adaptable. It's one thing to be flexible and adaptable, but it's another thing to lie. I just need to put that out there. Be yourself. It might make you a little more vulnerable, but that's the best way to make sure that your connections are authentic. Be yourself. I'm talking about before you can set boundaries with going into next year. Oh, I need to set boundaries. I need to make, yeah. You do need to set boundaries, but let's make sure that we're connecting with the right people with whom we can set boundaries. And before we even think about sometimes setting boundaries, we need to ask ourselves, am I respecting other people's boundaries? Because sometimes when you get to know people, you will know what they can tolerate or what they're going to tolerate. You'll get to know that very quickly. You know their likes and dislikes, and you know the limits that they put up, and you know them very quickly. And you have to take people where they are. For example, if you're trying to connect with somebody in the work setting, they may not be willing to tell you about their personal life or their dating life. And so we need to learn how to respect people's boundaries. If we're going to build meaningful relationships, if we're going to connect with people, one of the things that we have to do is not necessarily be your own authentic self or be your organic self, but make sure that we're respecting other people's boundaries. And let your conversations do just that. Sometimes we say we're going to do one thing, or we tell ourselves we're going to do one thing, but then our conversation seems to suggest something else. Oh yeah, I respect your boundaries. So, but then the next thing you know, you've asked a very personal question. So make sure that your conversations uh, uh, are congruent with your respect for other people's boundaries. Who are you dating these days? Well, we're just coworkers. Why are you asking me who am I dating? That's none of your business. I mean, it's that kind of thing. And as you're talking, as you're getting to know people, let your conversation go beyond surface. I talked about making sure that your conversation respects boundaries, but let your conversations go beyond basic facts and basic surface stuff. Get to know people. And then here's another thing, you all, and I think I may have shared some of this before. Make sure if you're going to connect with people in the right way, in a real way, and in a strong way, make sure that you stay focused on the present. If you're having a conversation with someone, guess what? You should make sure that you focus on them. I've said it time and time again. It bothers me to no end when I'm having a conversation with people and they pick up their phone and they're looking at the phone. Now, if you're expecting something or if there's an emergency that you're dealing with, then fine, say that to me. But come on, you all, let's learn how to stay focused and stay focused on the present. And we need to share that with the next generation. Sometimes we need to share it with the generation above and below us, because we've become so distracted by these cell phones and these electronic devices. I'm not saying that they in and of themselves are a bad thing, but the way we handle them. We've got to learn how to stay focused on the present. You shouldn't be looking at your phone and think about what you want for dinner while somebody's trying to tell you what's going on in their lives, or someone is dealing with a crisis or personal situation. Come on, that is disrespectful. And I don't mean just being present mentally, but you need to be present physically. Your body language should suggest that you are present. It should suggest to someone that you have my full attention, you have my undivided attention. You don't want to talk to people and have them feel like you don't care about what they're saying or that you don't feel like it's important to connect with them. You have to learn how to stay focused on the present. Never mind at this point setting boundaries. At least let's connect with the people first. You can't set boundaries with me. You can't set boundaries with me if you don't connect with me. Or you can't set boundaries for me if you don't connect with me. And as I said, that requires moving beyond the surface level, moving beyond the surface conversation, moving beyond just talking about weather. You got to ask people, you got to find out, what are your values? If I'm trying to connect with you, I need to know what your values are. I need to know what makes you tick. I need to know what's important to you, what makes you laugh, what makes you cry, what makes you passionate. What types of goal? What is your vision? What are your goals for the future? What are your biggest hopes? What are your biggest dreams? These are questions that would give us insight into the people that we're trying to connect with. They would give us insight. Did I not shout out the LTTC VIPs for this evening? Linda Martin, Marissa, and Hattie Boone. It's so good to see you. It's good to see all the rest of you as well. Them cell phones, shake my head. They have damaged our attention span. We miss so many moments when your face is buried in your phone and public. J song for you. You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. Because if we're talking about building meaningful connections, I'm not going to compete with an iPad or with a cell phone, because it is clear that there's something there with which you have connected as opposed to me. And so we have to look at that. Let's give people our attention. Let's get back to when people mattered. Oh my God. Let's get back to when people mattered. Do you remember, have you ever been in a conversation and someone comes in and they would interrupt and particularly, or if you think about whether or not you would interrupt, and the individual say, no, excuse me, I'm talking to him. Excuse me, I'm talking to her. It mattered. We made people matter. I wish sometimes we could just look at these mobile devices that are in people's hands and say, excuse me, phone, I'm trying to talk to her. Excuse me, iPad, I'm trying to talk to him. Meaningful connections. I don't know you all, but I'm hopeful and prayerful, and I guess I can just put it that way. I'm hopeful and prayerful that the human spirit will reignite and will connect, and we will realize that these things that we hold in our hands, these are not people. If anything, it's just artificial intelligence. Well, and that's another conversation all by itself. But let's also be mindful of how we communicate. It helps us to build stronger connections with people. When you start speaking with someone new, you're sharing, and your sharing really should be balanced. Your sharing should be balanced. So let's share the conversation. Make sure I know some people who sometimes have a one-sided conversation. They can start a conversation and can go on for 15 minutes. And then after 15 minutes, they say, okay, listen, I'll talk to you later. No, well, I never got a chance to say anything. Excuse me. You had 15 minutes. Can I at least get 30 seconds? Let's learn how to share conversations. Every good conversation has what we call a give and take. For example, if you're going to ask somebody about their goals, be willing to share your goals. If you're in a conversation and you feel like the other person isn't asking you about yourself, when you've asked them about their self, they might be distracted. So I'm going to put the onus back on you. Don't feel bad to say, but you know what? I asked you. Let me offer you some of that same information about me. Let's learn how to share conversations. Don't dominate the conversations, but share conversations. I'm talking about if we're going to connect, and be genuine with your admiration for people. I love this particular tip because it means that you're showing your appreciation for someone. That's important because it can put a smile on their face. I've often said, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know what they're dealing with. You don't know what they have to wrestle with when they go home. You don't know what's behind the door. Because sometimes showering people with admiration is a foundation for a deeper connection. It's okay to give people compliments. Just make sure that you're sincere about them. Show your admiration, and be careful about doing this on social media. My goodness, be careful about doing this on social media, because if you're trying to build a connection with someone who's relatively new to your life, sometimes you might be tempted in this day and era, in this day and age. Sometimes we are tempted to reach out to people on social media and just show a lot of compliments and just say all kinds of stuff. But listen, y'all, I'm talking about what's genuine. What's genuine? Learn how to give people sincere compliments, learn how to mean it, and learn how to be a good listener so that when they start responding, I'm talking about making connections, because once again, what am I saying? You can't set boundaries with people until you can't set boundaries for people until you've made a connection with people. So at this point, I'm talking about let's learn how to connect with people. We say that. What does it look like? Well, we're talking about it. It means that you are authentic. You are who you are. You're a good listener. You don't mind showing admiration. You make sure that you share the conversation. The conversation is balanced. It's not just one side. It's not just a one-way conversation. You make sure that you move past surface level stuff, and you can talk about hopes and goals and dreams and ambitions. You can do all of that, but you can also be respectful of what limits they put in the relationship. That is making the connection with other people. That's what we've got to do. And sometimes, you all, if we're going to make sure that we connect with people, I always say that we make time for the people who are important. Everybody gets busy. Everybody gets busy, and that can make it feel like there's zero time to connect with people. And sometimes we fall back on that. Well, I was busy. Okay, how many times am I going to hear that? Oh, I had something to do. Something came up. We make time for the people who are important. We really do. And if people are important, we will schedule time. You take a look and see when you can be the most available to them. If it's the weekends or weekday or evenings or morning, whatever it is, rather than feeling rushed, schedule when you want to connect with them. Why is that important, Color? It is important because once you agree on a certain time, then you can give the proper energy to the time and the space that you're going to spend with people. And here's something that we don't do. We don't do this often, and I think people have gotten away from this. But when you're talking to people, make eye contact. When I was growing up, they would say to me, look them in the eyes. Make sure that you respect people. Look them in the eyes. But can I tell you this? When you look people in the eyes, make sure that you don't stare at them. Because sometimes if you have a cold stare on your face, that's one thing. But learn how to make eye contact. It's one of the easiest ways to show somebody that you're interested in what they have to say. It really is. Because when you are attentive this way, it'll help the other person see that you want to build a deeper relationship with them. What else does it say? It says, I'm happy to be in this space with you. I'm not thinking about being anywhere else. I'm not thinking about being with anybody else. I'm happy to be in this space with you. That's what eye contact says a lot of times. Maintaining eye contact makes people feel like they can trust you. It really does. It helps people open up. And it keeps the conversation flowing, because when I can look at you, I can almost see, as it were, into your soul. I can see what it is that you're trying to convey. I can see the sincerity of what you have to say to me. When you're face to face with people, there's something powerful about the connection of the human spirit. I've told us this before. I've said, make sure, and you all have heard me say, make sure that you get a post-it and just remind yourself sometimes that if you're going to connect with people, how about smiling? Don't frown at me. Don't sit in front of me with a grimace on your face. Don't sit in front of me with a glare on your face. Don't sit in front of me with this furrowed brow wondering, why are you here? Make sure that you offer a smile. Because the people that you're conversing with really could be nervous. They could have some kind of social anxiety. We never know what people are going through. People never knew when I was growing up that I was socially maladjusted. Didn't know. Didn't know that I didn't necessarily like crowds or being around people. And I didn't necessarily know how to manage that. So people who would just smile at me offered me so much warmth. It made a difference in my life. Learn how to offer people a smile. If you're going to connect with people, a smile will connect with people in more powerful ways than you can imagine. It shows that you're having a good time in their space, and it lets them know that you're comfortable in their space. It can reduce the stress of or the awkwardness of a situation that could otherwise be there. There's something about a smile that connects with people because it initiates what I call positivity. It makes people feel comfortable enough to open up. And that's how we connect. Those are the ways that we can connect with people. And after you connect with people, then you can say, you know what, now I can set boundaries. I can set boundaries. I can maintain them because I've made the connections. And after you've made the connections, now you can set, after you've made the connections with, you can set boundaries for. Cutler, why do I need to set boundaries? Because boundaries show the areas of respect. Boundaries show the area of camaraderie. Boundaries show the areas of strength. Boundaries show the areas of accountability. These boundaries will define how much you respect me. These boundaries will define how much I am accountable to you. And sometimes then you have to reflect on your reasons for setting boundaries. Sometimes people are shy. Sometimes people are inhibited. Sometimes people are guarded. So then we have to understand why we set boundaries. Sometimes setting boundaries are important for emotional well-being. Stuff happens and people are not always comfortable with everybody's stuff. And they're not comfortable, and sometimes they're not sure why. So the first step in having healthy boundaries is spending time to get to know you. Who am I? What's going on in my life? Let me make sure I understand why I need to set these boundaries. It might be that I need to set these boundaries for my own emotional well-being. It might be that I need to set these boundaries because I know my triggers. I know what has the potential to push me out of character. It might be I know that I don't dwell well in certain spaces. In stress-free in stress-induced places, I don't do well. So you have to understand why you're setting boundaries. Just reflect on your reasons for setting boundaries. And then let me just say this: don't set up 117,000 boundaries, but you may want to just start out with a few boundaries. Because if you have not set up boundaries, if you haven't set up boundaries for people, they don't know which lines to cross. There is no line for them to cross. And so you end up sometimes frustrated and sometimes offended and sometimes disgusted and sometimes angry with people when you did not set boundaries. Reflect on your reasons for needing boundaries. Oh, this may make me angry, so I need to set boundaries. This may make me depressed, so I may need to set boundaries. This is not good for my mental well-being, so I need to set boundaries. This is not good for my emotional well-being, so I need to set boundaries. This has the potential to offset some of my triggers, so I need to set boundaries. Just know your reason for setting boundaries, and then start with a few, not a whole lot. Because sometimes the whole notion, if you're a person who has no boundaries, you've just thrown all caution to the wind and people can say and do anything. And now you need to set boundaries because you realize, you know what, that person made me upset. That person hurt my feelings. That person pushed me into a space where I didn't recognize who I was. That person, I mean, we keep saying all that kind of stuff. And so what then you need to do is set boundaries. If you don't set boundaries, you may need to set them and start with just a few, because setting up boundaries for everybody and everything could become emotionally overwhelming. So start with just a few. Set boundaries. Because that allows you to take things at a more comfortable pace. It helps you time to reflect on what you're hearing. It offers you time to reflect on what you are experiencing. Set boundaries. It helps you to make sure that you're headed in the right direction. It helps you to make sure that you showed up better today than you did yesterday. It helps you to ensure that you're going to show up better tomorrow than you did today. Set boundaries. And consider setting boundaries early in the relationship. Consider setting boundaries early into the formation of your brotherhood, sisterhood, or whatever, or your friendship, or whatever it may be. Define the perimeters of your friendship and what it looks like. What am I saying? What do you mean, Cutler, about boundaries? Expectations. Set expectations from the very beginning. Well, listen, this is how I operate. This is how I best operate. I don't operate well in that kind of space. I don't operate in that kind of environment. How many of you have actually set boundaries and your friends know it? How many of you can say that your friends know what lines to cross and what lines not to cross? How many of you have ever been upset for something that someone in your life said or did, and you realize after the fact that you were upset by what they said or did, but they didn't know that they couldn't say or do that because you never told them that they couldn't? Set boundaries. And as you're setting boundaries, you want to make sure that you're consistent. You're less inclined to get your feelings hurt if you set boundaries. You're less inclined to come out confused and frustrated if you set boundaries early. And then again, make sure that you try to be consistent with setting boundaries. And don't let them slide. Just don't let people get away with stuff, because you all have heard the adage, the cliche: if you give people an inch, they'll want to take a mile. Letting boundaries slide can lead to confusion. Oh, well, you let me get away with that the last time I said it. Well, you see, that's what you don't do. Make sure that you're consistent with your boundaries. I do, and everyone knows it. I'm telling you, make sure that you're consistent with your boundaries. So there we have it. There we have it. And don't be afraid to go back and reevaluate and reassess your boundaries. Connect with people. That's one thing. So make sure that you connect with people. Yeah. Set some healthy boundaries. Communicate whenever your boundaries are crossed. But before you can set these boundaries, make sure that you've done what you need to do to connect with people. So that is why I wanted to talk about connecting and connecting with people and setting boundaries. They sort of go hand in hand. And as we're getting ready for the next year, make sure that you're taking the right people in your life, and make sure that you're taking the right people into the year with you. Just make sure. You all do me a favor. I may pick up with this next week. Because setting boundaries is so important. Connecting with the right people is so important. And I agree with that, McDonough. You teach people how to treat you by your actions. And all that you're doing, what am I saying? Make sure that you practice self-love. I'm connecting with the right people because I love myself. I'm making sure that I don't connect with people who cannot embrace my hopes and dreams and visions and all of those things because I love myself. I set boundaries because I love myself so that I am not off-centered. I'm not upset psychologically. I don't experience undue anger, undue depression, undue discouragement because I didn't set boundaries. I make sure that I connect with the right people and that I set boundaries in my life. There are some people I've watched them disrespect other people. And I didn't even have to think twice because I said, you got away with that. And you all, come on. You may have said this too. You got away with that with them. But that doesn't happen over here because I've defined my boundaries. It's a lofty goal for 2024. Make sure that you connect with the right people and make sure that you set boundaries. I like that. Support healthier relationships. You all, let's keep doing what we do. If I remember correctly, our dear friend who's typically with us every evening here, she is Paula D. She's burying her mother tomorrow. Let's keep her in our thoughts and prayers, and remember that we had a fantastic, wonderful person who's no longer with us, and that's Miss Evelyn. She was 101 years old, and her daughter's going to bury her tomorrow. So let's make sure that we keep her in our thoughts and prayers. Meanwhile, let's keep doing what we do. Let's keep building community, and let's make sure that we maintain connectivity and keep your heads up, keep your hopes up, stay safe, stay sane, and know that from my heart to yours, there is and always will be so much love. And until the next time we get together, do me a favor, you all. Tell somebody, come on, and let's talk to color. I'll see you the next time I see you. Good night.